Last month, a Wake County teacher was arrested on 12 counts of assaulting students with disabilities. What's your reaction to that?
Well, as you know, I can't speak specifically about student or employee events, but the one thing that we're always concerned about is the safety of our students, making sure that we have policies and procedures in place to deal with any kind of incident like this that comes up.
Do you feel like the policies and procedures that the district has in place were followed?
Yes, I know our policies were followed. One of the issues that we have is being a large organization, there can be communication gaps sometimes, but our expectation is that we follow our policy, that we try and prevent any kind of delays that might come up in any investigative event. One of the things that our HR department has to do is to be able to look at things that are reported, make sure that we triage those and put them at the right level of importance. And so that's always our number one responsibility, to ensure that we follow our policy, ensure that we follow the law.
But we know that there were extreme delays in this. I have letters from 3 different staff members who reported the abuse to East Wake administrators right around the same time the abuse happened in fall of 2022. None of that was reported to law enforcement until May of 2024.
Right.
How do you make sense of that gap?
So again, can't talk specifically about any particular event, but what I can tell you is that our number one goal and number one responsibility is to make sure that we follow the law, report things appropriately as the law requires us to do. If at any point that we don't do that, then we accept law enforcement sharing with us that we haven't done things with fidelity. But that is always our goal, to make sure that we follow the law and we never deviate from that.
Well, then speaking generically, as 19 months from the time of multiple cases of abuse are reported to getting that to law enforcement, is that an appropriate amount of time?
What I would say is that any delay is never appropriate, whether that's 1 day or 1,000 days. And so our number one goal is to make sure that we continue to put resources in place so we can address any kind of issue with fidelity, that we have a proper reporting structure. We're certainly adding personnel in our HR department to make sure we have the platform and the bandwidth to be able to handle any level of complaints that come in. I know for any parent employee, it is about how do we properly respond and timely respond to anything. And so our goal is to always look at our organization, make sure we do have the proper bandwidth to deal with any incident in a proper time frame.
Are principals mandatory reporters?
What I would say is that there's a whole network in terms of who is responsible for reporting something, and so that means that as a principal, if information comes to you, then there's a process that you follow to make sure that it is reported properly. That's what we don't make sure that everybody follows that process and reports according to our policy.
Did Principal Stacey Alston follow this properly?
So again, this is a specific issue that I can't talk about, and so we understand that, but the expectation is that every person in an administrative position knows what the procedure is, that they are expected to follow that. If there's any difficulty in that, we want to make sure that we provide any follow-up professional development to make sure that every single employee who's a part of a reporting structure knows exactly what they're supposed to do.
I think the length of time and the vulnerability of the students in question is very concerning to any parent that has a student within the school district. Are you investigating the way in which this was handled?
So again, can't speak specifics, but anytime that a matter comes to us, we do the proper investigation to make sure that if the resources we have are not adequate, that we make pivots to make sure our students are safe. I want to say to every parent and every person that's listening that our number one duty is to make sure that our students are safe, that we have the proper procedures in place, and that anytime we see gaps in that, we feel that the structure is not large enough to handle it, and we have to expand. We have to continually re-examine all the practices that we have to ensure that we're keeping students safe, and more importantly, that we're following the law.
What's Stacey Alston's employment status with the district?
Again, a specific employee can't really talk about employees.
You could say if he was suspended or not.
Well, what I can tell you is that we can't get into specifics about employees. And so what I can tell you is that, again, the number one goal is to make sure that any procedure that is followed, that we follow up on that, and that at any point a person does not do that, then we have to do an investigation and get involved in disciplinary procedures if they are necessary.
Do you feel that they're necessary in this case?
As I said, any situation that we have an issue, we investigate that properly, And then if we determine that a disciplinary procedure is in place, that's what we do. And again, something only at specific times we can talk about it and share about a disciplinary procedure.
A month after these parents brought their concerns to Principal Austin, James Rencher was sent to Akins Middle School in Fuquay Varina. Are you looking into that? Don't you think it's odd that a teacher that was later found that there was significant enough evidence to charge him with 12 counts of assault from a November 2022 case was able to teach at a middle school for a year or more later?
Yeah. So what I can tell you is that, again, specific employee issues that we can't talk about. We know employees transfer for a whole host of reasons. And in these cases, in all schools, we determine that employees may engage in activities that are inappropriate. And so not talking about a specific case, but again, our responsibility is to know and understand when something has been done, investigate that properly, and then make sure we put in the proper disciplinary procedures when that's necessary. As always, reporting to law enforcement in the manner that they require us to do that.
With all due respect, you're really not saying much. Mm-hmm. The ball was dropped. Mm-hmm. We have records showing that. Mm-hmm. What can you tell families right now? So what I can tell families is that we are putting the processes in place to shore up any kind of gaps that we may see. We're tightening up our communications in terms of how any incident is communicated from a first report to the HR department to whatever part of our organization that is involved in that. You know, the difficult thing about any situation is that we know and understand the specifics of a case, but we're limited in terms of what we can share. That is probably the most difficult part for an organization, particularly for a school district, that we can't really get into the specifics of a case, of a situation, so that we don't violate the rights of that person who's making the complaint or the person who has a complaint made against them. And so, again, the responsibility is ensuring to our public that we examine and re-examine all of our practices, that we know we are a large organization, but what I can tell you, delays and tremendous delays, that's really not acceptable. And so my responsibility is to make sure that we close those gaps, and we still encourage any parent, any student to report any wrongdoing that they see or they may experience, and really any employee. It's our responsibility to make sure that we respond appropriately, accordingly, and in a timely manner. Principal Austin tried to tell the parents that there was nothing to the anonymous letters they received, that essentially everything was fine. The district, as we know and as has been reported by your staff, did their own investigation. But we know that law enforcement was not notified for a very long time. What within that district investigation invalidated the many claims from staff who tried to report this abuse?
So again, can't really talk about those specifics, but that is part of the responsibility that I have as superintendent, is to examine any situation, identify if mistakes were made by individuals or a group of individuals, and then make sure we mitigate that in the proper way.
Are you doing that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's when I talk about shoring up our communications during professional development with staff about the proper reporting of incidents, and then making sure that we have additional personnel to deal with what might be an increase in reporting incidents.
All right.
We've got about 3 seconds.
Okay, I have one more question for you. Speaking generically, when a principal or any district official or administrator in leadership receives a report or multiple reports of abuse, how quickly should they report that to law enforcement? What's the district policy?
Yeah, what I would expect is that when a report is made to a principal, that they report that immediately. They reach out to the Human Resources Department. And so one of the things that I would expect is that when something is brought to leadership, there's a responsibility that they have to determine the credibility of a claim. And if there's any question about that, they certainly reach out to the Human Resources Department for guidance, because we don't want to create any gaps. So there is a reporting structure. We expect everybody to follow that, and the timetable may vary based on when something is reported, who reports it, and the manner in which they receive it. So if a principal receives something by email, they may not read the email till several hours later, but it is about making sure that they know and understand what has been reported to them, and they follow all the procedures to make sure it's reported properly. But in the end, any questions that anyone has, they know that they can pick the phone up and call the Human Resources Department for additional guidance.
Is there, I think this is very important. Is there any policy that extends any of these abuse claims to be reported, not these generic abuse claims, to be reported beyond within the district?
So I think our policies will be clear about how we report. I know that how we report to law enforcement, that's something that's outside of our organization. That's something that anybody would be required to do, any school district. And that's what we're bound to do, follow our policy and follow what the law says. And that at any point we're not doing that, then law enforcement will inform us to say, you've dropped the ball in this particular situation and this is how we need to mitigate that.
Has this been a learning lesson for talking to parents? They were completely shut out for years.
What I will say is that our number one goal is being transparent with our community, with our constituents, particularly our parents. And I want every parent to know and understand if there's an issue that they have, then don't hesitate to reach out to the appropriate staff, and that if they feel they're not getting what they need, then there are multiple ways that they can report, ultimately reaching out to the superintendent's office and saying, I've tried to do this and I haven't been able to get pushback or feedback, and then we will take it from there.